Welcome back to the Now Morning Show. It's just about 26 minutes after the hour of 7 o'clock. I'm Kimberly D'Souza in your company. And you know, last week we had Inspector Michelle Lewis come to us to talk about guns and ammunition. And she was so thorough that we thought we had to have her back in studio. But of course, we're talking about something else. This morning, we're going to be talking about what the public conceives as an increase in the number of missing persons. So Inspector Lewis, good morning, and thanks so much for joining us again.
Good morning, and thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning to your viewers. Good morning to your listeners.
Right. Now, Inspector, like I said, we have been seeing an increased number of people missing. I'm not sure if it's that the police is just doing a great job and pushing out those press releases, or if, in fact, we are seeing that increase. Is it true?
Well, a missing person, let me give you what is the definition of a missing person. So a missing person is someone who would have disappeared or whose status is unknown for a period of time. Before in Trinidad and Tobago, we indicated that 24 hours and more you can make a report. That has changed. So once a person is missing for a couple hours or so, we encourage persons to come forward and make a report. And a missing person, that person could either be voluntary, that missing person could either do that act voluntarily or involuntarily. Over the last 8 years or so, we have seen an increase in the number of persons that are reported missing. And that is because you no longer have the 24-hour look period. It's a shorter period. However, though we have seen that increase, within 48 to 36 hours, those persons return.
Okay.
Those persons will return. So actually, we have about 90% of the reports of missing persons, and the persons return home.
Nice. Now, I know that you may not have the figure for the first 3 months, but in terms of the years for, like, let's say 2019, 2020, 2021, what are the figures, and are we seeing any particular trends? Right.
So for the year 2019, we had overall 940 persons missing. For 2020, 771, which was a 18% reduction.
Okay.
And in 2021, we had 712 persons missing. In relation to that, when you look at the male and female ratio, during the same period for 2019, we had 405 males and 535 females. For 2020, 339 males and 432 females. 2021, 347 males and 365 females. For this year, during the first 3 months of the year, we had about 130 persons missing. And out of that, for January in particular, we had 48 returned home, and one person, unfortunately, was dead.
Wow.
In February, 42 persons, 39 returned home safely. 2 persons died, unfortunately, and well, condolence to the family as usual, as the police we normally would relay and put. And just to indicate, for example, where we have persons who would have died and the family would have experienced any kind of trauma, the Victim and Witness Support Unit of the TTPS kick in to give that kind of counseling to persons, so that we don't just investigate matters on a criminal aspect, but we also look at the social and psychological aspect of the person, right? And so we had for that month 2 persons and 1 outstanding, which means that person is unaccounted for at this time. And of course, for March so far, 39 persons. But over the years, we have seen just about 48 persons on average per month. And most cases, the persons return. So even though we have seen that the numbers have increased tremendously, it's because you no longer have that 24-hour period to wait. Persons would come forward and make the report early, and we encourage that, and we encourage persons to come with a photo of the person as well, a recent photo, so that we can use all mediums out there, especially social media, the media, as you would know,
of course,
to share that information. You will see it on billboards as well, and that really helps. So when members of the public say they might know the person's name, but when they see the face of that person next door, you know, especially in the cases of children,
yes,
they would communicate with police, and that child will come back home.
Inspector, one of the things that you shared with the trends, and we've seen in the numbers, is that more women than men go missing in Trinidad and Tobago. And throughout investigations over the years, and even up until recently, of course, has the TTPS been able to identify any perhaps key factors that are repeated in these cases that we will be able to look out for? What
tends to happen is that, so for example, we have overall, we have male, female, and children. I don't think I'd mentioned the children aspect. But overall, a lot of the cases that we do have are children. And even though we said it's female, in a lot of the female aspect, it's children.
Okay.
And in that children category, we have a lot of persons who are habitual runaways. And so, like, for example, during the Easter period, during the August, July period, there we'll see a peak. Perhaps about 7 persons increase in those months, which is generally during the vacation period.
Right, yes.
We would see that increase. So those female numbers that you're seeing tend to go more to the girls, as in female children, and not necessarily adults.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, also too, I mean, you mentioned that we might have habitual people who do it, and of course there might be runaways. What are some of the other causes or reasons you would find for people missing?
Well, so for children, it would be like that. Sometimes they fall out with parents, of course. Sexual grooming on the internet, they may go to look for someone. It might turn out to be something that is not supposed to be so. That is, so it might start out to be voluntary in the first instance, and then it might turn out to be involuntary because the situation has turned. Outside of that, you have persons, for example, who would actually stage their own.
Yeah. We've seen it happen.
Kidnapping for ransom. So it's no longer, a missing person. It will go into another category, right? So we would see that, and you would see it with adults, and for various reasons. So that missing person, the category of missing person, even though it falls under anti-kidnapping unit in relation to investigation, you also have the anti-trafficking unit, the human trafficking unit, who also look into missing persons. Because as you know, persons are trafficked, persons are go missing as a result of that type of trade. So we look at that department in the police service, the anti-kidnapping, we look at child protection unit, we look at the human trafficking section as well. And so those agencies we kind of pool together in relation to missing persons. We also use, now that we have the National Operations Task Force, because they are multifaceted, we will include them to go into particular areas when we're searching for persons.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And, I think this is something that is dear to many of our hearts in Trinidad and Tobago. We see on a daily basis, of course, reports sometimes maybe a bit sensationalized, let's be honest, especially now that you've been able to break down for us how these trends actually happen when it comes to peaking during different times. Now, in a case where we have individuals who perhaps may do that, let's just the same way you got stumped and you said, well, I don't really want to say it, but in a case where you have individuals that opt to put themselves missing, let's say, how is that treated with in the service?
So the matter would be investigated as per normal, and if it is discovered that the person would have done that kind of thing, there is the waste of police time and different offences that would associate with that, and we charge persons.
So persons have been charged?
Indeed.
So it's interesting though, because so one of the things that you mentioned a bit earlier is the holistic approach that the TTPS does have. So if somebody does suffer from, of course, trauma after having lost a family member or a family member going missing. So in a case where we have somebody who kidnaps themselves, let's say, right?
Stage it.
Yeah, right? What about the emotional side of that? Because 9 out of 10 times when somebody does something like that, it's a cry for attention. So do the police also offer some sort of psychological service for those individuals in addition to being charged?
I don't have information to say that most times, or that the person will do that because they're looking for sympathy or attention. Sometimes it's for monetary reasons, right? Because they're adults and for whatever reason, right? So I don't have that type of data to say about that. But of course, if someone is traumatized for whatever reason, the service is available. And so it is available to everybody. It's not going to take away from the person being charged.
Yeah.
The person will be charged, but of course, so it will work, side by side. But yes.
No, I know access to data, of course, is important in our conversation. But just as we chat here, when we speak about children who go missing and who are runaways as well, what about those sort of services being offered to the children as well? Is that something that's extended?
Certainly. So in cases of children in particular, because they are minors, right? And the law look at children in a particular way because the development of a child is not yet full, right? So that you have the Children's Authority that will normally come in, where you have children running away habitually. There's a root cause. It is not always for sexual reasons that they were groomed or coerced to go in a particular way. Sometimes because they're running away because of a situation at home, and so they try to get away from it and may run into the hands of danger. So there is the intervention either by community police or by the Child Protection Unit or by Children's Authority in giving counseling and support to the child or children. You also get that type of support through the school. So the school in itself also have school social workers and guidance personnel there who are there for that type of reason, so that a child doesn't feel neglected or vulnerable because of whatever reason. The service is available.
Right. Now, Inspector Lewis, I mean, is there any point that the police just say, okay, this person is missing and we can't find them anymore? Or are there plenty cold cases, I would probably ask, that is still existing?
We have one or two, like I indicated, right? So like one person, so you consider that person still unsolved or unaccounted for. Right. The matter is not closed because sometimes years after, you know, you may have a matter where, for example, the officers may have been treating with another type of matter and this person confessed certain things and it might lead them to a particular place. I'm just saying, hypothetically. And so you cannot close it until you definitely have information to conclude a matter. So for family members, you know, although they may look for closure, we cannot just do that without a proper procedure in place. So it technically remains open.
Wow, okay. Well, Inspector Lewis, as always, thank you so much for joining us here. I know we had you for guns and ammo, we have you back for missing children, and of course, who knows what else we're going to have you back for.
You know, there was, over the weekend, we've been seeing some instances where when the police are effecting our executing our duties, we are seeing where members of the public are becoming involved and entangled in matters and but obstructing the police in the execution of their duties. And so we would have seen some things recently. Within the last week, we would have seen two instances, one involving school children, as we spoke of children, and another, I think, another division. We just want to employ members of the public that when police officers are executing their duties, do not obstruct, do not get in the way, do not interfere, because you yourself can be charged. And one of the things that persons do not look at is the fact that when I am charged, I have a criminal record against me. I have what we call a certificate of character. And that piece of document weighs very heavy, because you will go for a job somewhere and they ask for this certificate of good character, people say, but it's character, and it's only when you get the results and you see that you have a matter pending at the back of it or two, then you realize that, you know, so we encourage persons, you know, allow the police to do their job, and you take it from there.
Inspector Lewis, thank you so much for coming to talk to us about missing persons. You're on the Now Morning Show. We're going to take a break and be right back. Stay with us.